Here is something almost nobody tells you about how large organizations actually work. The further up the hierarchy a piece of information travels, the less it resembles what it started as. Not because people are lying, not because of malice, because the system was built to compress, filter, and translate everything that moves upward. Research on upward communication in organizations found that only 54 to 65% of available information is passed from one level to the next. By the time something reaches the top of a 5-level hierarchy, it may carry less than 10% of its original detail. You have felt this directly. You spent 3 weeks solving a problem that saved the company time and money. You documented it. You sent it to your manager. 2 weeks later, you are in a meeting with your manager's manager and they have never heard of it. Or you raise a concern, a real one, with data, and it disappears into the chain above you. 2 months later, the same concern comes back down from the top as a new priority, framed as a senior insight. Or your annual review comes and the person writing it has a vague and generic sense of what you do. Not because they do not care. Because by the time information about your work reaches them, it has been through several rounds of compression. Your manager summarized you to their manager. Their manager summarized that summary to a VP. The VP distilled it into a slide. By the time it arrives at the level that actually controls your career trajectory, you are a bullet point, and bullet points do not get promoted. What I'm going to walk you through is built on decades of organizational communication research. The foundational study on upward communication filtering was published in the Academy of Management Journal in 1973 by Athanasiades. Henry Mintzberg's work on organizational structure documented the translation problem across management layers. And research on middle management communication from 2040 Digital and CEIBS has confirmed the same pattern still operating in modern organizations. This is not a complaint. It is a description of a system. Here is how the system works. Every manager in a corporate hierarchy faces the same structural problem. Information arrives from below, in volume and detail. It needs to travel upward, in summary and priority. The manager's job, in part, is to decide what goes up, what gets held, and how it gets framed when it moves. Mintzberg described this as the manager's role as a communication hub, receiving detailed operational information and translating it into formats that senior decision-makers can act on. That translation is necessary. A CEO cannot read every report from every team. A VP cannot process every data point from every project. The hierarchy exists precisely to compress information into manageable summaries. But here is where the system creates its first problem. Research on organizational communication shows that negative information is systematically filtered as it moves upward through hierarchies. Middle managers learn that surfacing problems can damage their standing, while surfacing successes enhances it. So the information that travels upward is not a neutral summary of what is happening below. It is a curated version, optimized for the messenger's career, not for accuracy. And because this happens at every level simultaneously, the distortion compounds. Each layer adds its own curation. Each layer optimizes slightly differently. By the time the information reaches 3 levels up, it has been curated 3 separate times. Your manager is not the only filter between you and the people who control your career. They are one of several, and each filter is not neutral. It is shaped by the career interests of the person doing the filtering. Understanding this means understanding that your career visibility is not a passive outcome of your performance. It is an active outcome of how your work is translated at each level above you. You have more influence over that translation than most people realize. There is a specific mechanism that explains why your manager's manager does not know what you do. Mintzberg called it the language translation problem. At each level of a hierarchy, information gets translated from the operational language of the level below into the strategic language of the level above. A frontline employee describes their work in terms of tasks, timelines, specific outputs, and technical detail. Their manager translates that into team metrics, project status, and resource utilization. Their manager's manager translates that into departmental KPIs, budget variance, and strategic alignment. By the time it reaches the VP level, it becomes a percentage, a traffic light, or a directional arrow on a dashboard. What gets lost in each translation is the same thing: the person, the specific contribution, the specific reasoning, the specific problem that was solved, and why it mattered. What remains is a number, a status, or a trend. And numbers, statuses, and trends do not have names attached to them by the time they arrive in the executive suite. This is why your manager's manager does not know what you do, not because they are inattentive, because the system has translated you out of the picture by the time your work reaches their level, and it does this to everyone, equally, systematically, by design. The translation problem means your work and your name decouple at some point in the hierarchy above you. Your work continues upward as a metric. Your name stops at your manager's level unless something actively carries it further. The professionals who stay visible above their direct manager are not doing better work. They are doing something specific to keep their name attached to their work as it travels up. That is a learnable skill, not a personality trait. There is a second, more personal, reason why information gets distorted on the way up. Athanasiades' 1973 research found that distortion of upward communication is negatively related to the level of security a subordinate feels. In plain terms, the less secure a manager feels in their role, the more they filter what they pass upward. A manager who feels their position is stable will pass up accurate, complete information, including problems and setbacks. A manager who feels their position is at risk will pass up a version of events that makes them and their team look as functional as possible. This matters for you directly, because what gets filtered in that process is not neutral. The problem you flagged 3 months ago that your manager has not escalated, that is the security filter at work. The project that is behind schedule but still showing green on the dashboard, that is the security filter at work. The team member who is genuinely exceptional but whose performance your manager describes in generic terms, that is the security filter at work. The CEI's research on this found that during transformation and uncertainty, this filtering tendency intensifies because leaders are often emotionally invested in initiatives and may react defensively to evidence of difficulties. Translation: the more a senior leader cares about something, the less honest the information they receive about it tends to be. If your organization is going through a major change, a restructure, a new strategy, a leadership transition, the information reaching the top about how that change is actually going is almost certainly rosier than reality. This is not conspiracy. It is the predictable output of the security filter operating at every level simultaneously. If you have accurate ground-level information about something that is not going well, that information has market value inside your organization. Getting it to the right person at the right level without it appearing to go around your manager is one of the most politically skilled moves a professional can make. The filtering problem is not just a career inconvenience. At its extreme, it is catastrophic. The CEIBS research specifically cited the Boeing 737 MAX disaster as an example of the information filtering problem taken to its fatal conclusion. The MCAS flight control system had known safety concerns at the engineering level. Those concerns were translated upward through management layers that were under intense pressure to keep the program on schedule and on budget. At each level, the concerns were framed in ways that made the program look more manageable than it was. By the time information reached the executives who could have ordered a program pause, it had been filtered through enough layers that the severity was obscured. 346 people died in 2 crashes before the full picture was understood. This is the extreme version of what the filtering problem produces. But the mechanism is identical to what happens in every organization. Every day, at every level. The same system that makes your manager's manager unaware of what you do also made Boeing's leadership unaware of what their engineers were telling them. The difference is the stakes. The mechanism is the same. The Boeing example is not about aviation. It is about what happens when the people with the most accurate information have the least structural power to communicate it, and when the people with the most structural power receive the least accurate information. That dynamic exists in every hierarchy. Recognizing it tells you two things: why the top floor is often the last to know, and why the most valuable thing you can do in any organization is find a way to get accurate information to the people who need it, even when the system is designed to prevent that. Here is the practical reality for anyone working inside a hierarchy right now. You cannot change the filtering system. It is structural. It will outlast every individual in the organization, but you can work with it deliberately rather than being worked by it passively. First, understand what your manager needs to summarize you accurately. Your manager is going to translate your work whether you help them or not. If you give them nothing to work with, the translation will be generic. If you give them the specific language, the specific impact number, the specific framing, they will use it because it makes their job easier. Second, make your work visible in formats that survive the translation. Detailed process documentation does not survive 3 levels of compression. A specific outcome expressed in business language does. Not, I redesigned the reporting workflow, but I reduced the monthly reporting cycle from 11 days to 4, freeing approximately 60 hours of analyst time per quarter. Third, find legitimate ways to exist at the level above your manager. This does not mean going around your manager. It means being present in cross-functional meetings where more senior people operate, contributing to company-wide initiatives, volunteering for projects with executive visibility, building professional relationships across the organization so that your name exists in more than one person's vocabulary at any given level. Fourth, give your manager something worth passing up every quarter, not a status update, a result, a number, a before and after. Something that, when translated through 3 levels of compression, still has a recognizable shape. If your contribution cannot survive compression, the question is not why nobody noticed. The question is whether you have expressed it in a way that could. Let's come back to where we started. Your manager's manager has no idea what you actually do, not because they do not care, because the system between you and them was built to compress, filter, and translate everything that travels upward. 54 to 65% of information makes it from one level to the next. Across 5 levels, the compounding means a fraction of the original reaches the top. Your work does not disappear because it is not good enough. It disappears because nobody taught you that the system was designed to make it disappear, and that surviving that system requires a specific, learnable set of moves. The managers who get promoted fastest are not always the best performers. They are the ones who figured out how to stay legible across every level of compression between them and the people who make promotion decisions. Legibility is a skill. Treat it like one. Next week, we go inside the unwritten rules of every corporate job, the ones nobody puts in the onboarding deck, the ones that get people fired without ever appearing in a performance review. Subscribe. The next one will make your first week make sense, in retrospect.